What it do, what it does, what it did. Welcome into the third episode of The Big Hit. I'm this week's host, Jake Taylor, and today we have a fun, action-packed show with NFL football featuring Nick Dodowski and Kaylee Wenderoth, shooting over the passionate NCAA football, Steve Langdon, Jeff Hart, and then some IUP football news with Jake Slobodnik and also Steve Langdon on that as well. So stay tuned, watch the entire show, and enjoy it. Hello everyone and welcome back into The Big Hit. I'm here to talk about NFL football with Nick Dodowski and Kaylee Wenderoth. Well guys, the Pittsburgh Steelers look rough on Sunday night, losing to the Ravens 26-14. It seems like every week brings a different opinion on the Steelers team. But what is your takeaway from this matchup?
Well, Jake, my main takeaway from this week's matchup against the Ravens is that the offense is going to have to carry the Steelers' defense this entire year, as we saw. The offense underperformed this week, and the defense obviously hasn't showed up once this entire year. So, yeah, the offense is going to have to carry this defense throughout the entire year, Jake.
Yeah, going along with that, obviously, our secondary is very weak. Any deep balls, we always leave the tight ends pretty open, so that's something we have to work on. We also choosing not to blitz Flacco, so he had a lot of time in the pocket, which was really bad, and we only sacked him twice. That was also something that we need to work on. But those are our on-the-field problems. We also have a lot of problems off the field. You have Bell, who's been a consistent problem. I mean, they have been saying he's gonna come back week 7, but that's if he does. But I feel that's not going to make the locker room any better. So I think that we have that. And when the team's not supporting each other, you're not going to be able to win games. So.
Right. And building off what Kaylee said about Le'Veon Bell, team's game plan around Le'Veon Bell, running back like Le'Veon Bell, he's a top tier running back in the league. And when you take a playmaker like Le'Veon Bell out of the lineup, it takes away opportunities for Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown to get the job done.
Yeah, especially because James Conner had 19 rushing yards. So that's not even a testament, I don't think, to the offensive line, because the offensive line's obviously fantastic.
Right.
So I think that's missing Le'Veon Bell could be a huge problem.
Not to mention that James Conner's 55th among all running backs in the league with yards per carry.
Yeah, that's almost impossible. But we'll stick in the AFC North. The Cincinnati Bengals moved to 3-1 with a 37-36 victory over Atlanta. With the Bengals now tied atop the AFC, could they contend for a playoff spot?
Jake, I think the Bengals can contend for a playoff spot. I really don't like the opponents they've matched up with so far this season. The teams they beat the Baltimore Ravens, which is a divisional foe. You'll beat them every once in a while. They also beat a weak Buffalo Bills team, and they also beat a hampered and injured Atlanta Falcons lineup this past week.
You can't question their talent. They're a loaded team. I think the problem with the Bengals is their productivity when they need it the most. They always seem to. They're a very good regular season team, but they always seem to choke when they get to the playoffs. They make mistakes. I mean, look at Perfect, for example. So as long as they keep themselves together and keep doing what they're doing, I think that they have the chance.
To make the playoffs? Yeah. You guys think they'll top the AFC North?
I think they could.
I've given them. They have a really high ceiling, but they also have a really low floor. So it really depends on what they get done throughout the season. And essentially, the Steelers gonna catch them. You think? I believe they will. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe. By the way we're looking right now, it's questionable. Yeah. I mean, I guess if Bell comes back, we can see what he does. So that's always an option.
I think the Bengals have a lot of tough opponents to come to with Carolina. Actually, they already played Carolina, but they also still have to play New Orleans Saints. Tough Tampa Bay Buccaneers team this year. They've still got lots of foes to beat this year. Haven't played the Steelers yet either, so
we're excited to see about that.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Houston Texans narrowly defeated the Indianapolis Colts 37-34 in overtime, a lot of overtime games this week, after a questionable call by the Colts head coach Frank Reich to go for it late in extra time. What were your thoughts on the call, and can either of these teams get close enough to the top of the division for this game to even really matter?
Well, Jake, I like Frank Reich's call to go for it on fourth down. I know it's getting a lot of hate on social media and all over television this week, but I think as a competitor, it's right not to fight for a tie. I'd want to play for the win, and I think that's what Frank Reich was going for there, even though he gave the Texans a good opportunity to win the game against them. I like what he did there.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think, it looks like a bad call, but at the same time, he didn't want to settle for that tie, and he wanted to be aggressive. So I think in his mindset, that's what he was thinking. It might have not turned out well, but I think his mindset was good in that situation.
Yeah, I think Andrew Luck was playing well, so it's good to trust your offense and your quarterback.
And to answer your question about do I think either one of these teams could have topped the AFC South, well, they've got two tough 3-1 teams in the Jacksonville Jaguars and Tennessee Titans above them, so both teams are at 1-3, 2 games back. It's going to be tough for them to get to the top, but we'll see as the season goes on.
I would say that the Texans definitely have a chance. They have one of the best defenses in the league, and Deshaun Watson's one of the best younger QBs that we have in the league. So I think as long as they get their running game going and they get a game plan with their defense, I think that they have a chance to top.
There are two undefeated teams in the NFL, the Los Angeles Rams and the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs played last night, Monday Night Football, with that dramatic comeback into the division, beating the Denver Broncos. Do you guys think these two teams are going to go undefeated? Do you think they're going to be beaten maybe one or two games? Do you think the Rams are going to come out top the NFC and the Chiefs the AFC? Or is there any competition with the two teams? What are you guys' thoughts?
I think for the Chiefs, Mahomes and Goff are looking like pretty good MVPs, so we can see what they're going to do for the team down the road. So I think the Chiefs are going to do pretty well. Possible Super Bowl.
Mahomes looked really good.
Yeah, both teams are offensive dominant for sure. Like you said, Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes are doing a great job leading their team so far this season. I think they have lots of young, strong weapons around them. And Todd Gurley, they're the Rams receiving core, and Mahomes has Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt. So both teams are very offensive, strong, and I think that they can meet Atlanta in the Super Bowl come February.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it too, I think that the Rams have a much better defense, however, than the Chiefs, because the Chiefs are ranked last, like you said on the radio yesterday. The Chiefs' defense wasn't very good. They let up large chunk plays. Case Keenum was bombing the ball deep a little bit on them, and Phillip Lindsay was getting big runs. So I think that I agree. I think the Rams are going to go undefeated all year until the NFC Championship.
Going back to your question about do I think that they could go undefeated, I think that the Chiefs might lose this week to a strong Jacksonville defense. I think that's going to be Mahomes' kryptonite this week.
You think Jalen Ramsey's going to shut them down?
Yep, absolutely.
All right, well, I'll be interested to see that, and I'm excited to see what the Rams can bring, because it's so exciting to watch the Los Angeles Rams and watch Goff and Gurley and Woods and Cook and Kupp and Sean McVay coaching. I love it. I love that whole team. The lone remaining winless team in the NFL, the Arizona Cardinals, who lost to Seattle on a last-second field goal. Will the Cards go winless, or can they find some success with quarterback Josh Rosen?
I think it's really early to start judging Josh Rosen, what he's getting done. I know the Cardinals are 0-4, but it's only this past week was Josh Rosen's first start. So I don't want to put too much of the blame on him so far. Maybe it's the system. It's a brand new head coach in Steve Wilks. The Cardinals, they have maybe an easy matchup against the 49ers this week in San Francisco, with missing their entire offense pretty much. So I think they can get it done this week against the 49ers.
Yeah, I think with Josh Rosen, he got thrown into a tough situation in one of the toughest divisions in the league. I know they wanted to kind of have him behind like Sam Bradford for at least a season, but that didn't work out. So I think as long as he gets that experience, he definitely can lead the team in the future.
Right, and I think the offense right now is in a place where it's built around David Johnson. Like, that's who's getting the big butts on their offense. So I think that if they start the game plan around Josh Rosen and his arm and his mentality, they might start winning some ball games here.
So, staying on rookie quarterbacks, is it too early to tell who's the best so far and who's the worst, you think?
Statistically, I'd say that Baker Mayfield's the best so far. And to say the least, I'd say Josh Allen, just because of how unproductive their offense has been in Buffalo this year. But
scoring 0 points, getting shut out by the Packers.
But they're only 4 games into their NFL career, so it's maybe too early to judge.
Yeah, I also like Baker Mayfield too. Like the way he came into that game and brought that like spark in the team and that momentum. Like I think he'll be able to do that with the rest of the season too and keep that team going.
Awesome, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Kaylee, and we'll be back with NCAA football with Jeff Hart and Steve Langdon.
The brain is a remarkable organ. It's almost infinite in its capacity. Its ability to reach its full potential is limited by only one thing: the heart. For if the heart isn't fully engaged in what you're doing, if you have no drive, no passion, the brain will simply go through the motions. Find your success at Indiana University of Pennsylvania.
Back at the Big Hit with Steve Langdon and Jeff Hart to talk very passionately about some NCAA football, and starting off with the most passionate game of them all. It was Ohio State against Penn State in Happy Valley, and Ohio State did in fact pull off the last-minute comeback to defeat Penn State 27-26. With how competitive the Big Ten Conference is, how important was this game to the potential conference championship and playoff hopes for both the Buckeyes and Nittany Lions?
Yeah, so last 2 years, Big Ten championship game was decided by this game. 2 years ago it was Penn State, last year was Ohio State. So that just goes to show you how big of a game it was. And for last year's game and this year's game to be decided by 1 point is huge in itself. Just to read off some stats, McSorley went 16 of 32 with 286 and 2 touchdowns, but also had 175 rushing yards. It was very questionable to run it on 4th and 5 to do a halfback draw up the middle.
Very questionable.
Yeah, very questionable. I would have did a pass run situation with McSorley, but just to put in perspective, I mean, this could be the game of the season.
Yeah.
And I would have said, I'm an Ohio State fan, but I would have said that even if it was Penn State who won it, just because it was intense throughout the majority of the game. Both offenses didn't show up the first half, and in the second half, it just was an all-out shootout. So it was a huge game in many aspects.
I have to agree. I mean, it's obviously a big game because you got the Big Ten Conference. It's a huge rivalry. It's, as you said, it decides the conference every year. I don't really have much to say for Ohio State. Congratulations on the great game. As far as playoff hopes, they're obviously still good, undefeated, doing great. Had that big win. I mean, they got Haskins, Heisman candidate. They over 1,400 yards this season, so I think they have a lot to look forward to. However, I'm going to defend my Penn States out there. The Penn State fans, hope is not lost. Let me tell you why. They have an easy rest of the season. They don't face a single other top 25 team. And here's the biggest reason. The SEC is going to help Penn State out. 4 of the top 8 teams are in the SEC, being Alabama, LSU, and Auburn, and Georgia. It's very unlikely that 2 of them are going to be undefeated going into next week. So that's going to open up some spots for them. So I think Penn State with McSorley and a lot of those offensive threats have a really good chance to move up in the ranking and still have playoff hopes and contentions.
Just for Ohio State, I think this was a big game just because they were without their best defensive player in Bosa. And Chase Young really showed up in the game, batted down a couple of balls, 2 sacks in the game as well. He was really all over the field playing as a linebacker, defensive end, hybrid type player in the game. And just overall, for that defense to come together, even with your best player being out against that Penn State crowd, which is insane.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane.
One of the best crowds.
Yeah, during whiteouts is absolutely crazy, a madhouse, and over 110,000 people were there. So
The stadium gets bumping.
yeah, so just the overall ability to go into Penn State and to get the victory is huge, not only for this coming week, but for the many weeks to come, as Ohio State doesn't play a lot of big-time opponents, probably until Michigan State and Michigan towards the end of the year.
So can you give a lot of credit to Ohio State for winning it, or a lot of credit to James Franklin for losing the game?
I think both. I think you can make a case for both, just because Ohio State did show up big in the second half, but James Franklin had some very questionable calls late in the game, and I think that was a big reason why Penn State wasn't able to win that game.
I mean, as far as Franklin, I have nothing but respect for the guy. He came into a bad situation, has absolutely led that team, and just
One of the best. I think he's the second best coach in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean that's up to opinion. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think I give him a lot of credit. I really think what happened was supposed to happen. I mean, Ohio State was naturally ranked higher, and I mean, both teams have great Heisman level quarterbacks right now. So I think it was pretty amazing that they kind of held them back in the first half, and it was only till the second half that they showed up, which is obviously going to help them for their Heisman contention. But I really don't think either team necessarily did terrible. You have 2 top 25 teams going at each other. One of them has to lose. I think they both did a great job. I mean, aside from the questionable calls, I think both teams played their hearts out, and it was a great game to watch. In all honesty, I think both have a very bright future ahead. I didn't see any any discrepancies that really pointed out and made me really nervous for either team. I think they're both very strong playoff caliber and contender teams. I mean,
it was only decided by 1 point.
Both well matched. In their own regard.
You can tell for sure. However, Notre Dame looked very good taking on Stanford, with the Irish defeating the Cardinal 38-17. Do the Fighting Irish have a chance at making noise as an independent in the playoff race?
Okay, well, Notre Dame has had a fairly easy schedule, in my opinion, this season. The only big-time game was against Michigan, and Michigan has looked iffy. They almost lost to Northwestern this week. Very inconsistent. Their quarterback play is extremely inconsistent, probably worse than some NFL teams. But just to read off the remaining schedule, they have Virginia Tech this week, it's at Virginia Tech, ranked 23rd in the nation, I believe. But then they have at home to Pitt, and then they go at Navy, home to Northwestern, home to Florida State, home to Cuse, Syracuse, and then at USC. So I think the biggest competition that they might have at the end of the year is Syracuse. They look strong against Clemson this week, and I think out of all the teams, they're probably the most well put together team I see in the remaining schedule. So if you say, should they go to the playoffs? It's up for debate because they have an easy schedule. So they should go undefeated the rest of the year. But in reality, will they? Most likely not. I think they will get into the playoffs personally, just because they're going to have a strong team going forward. But
I appreciate you giving a shout out to Syracuse. I think very underrated. That was another great game this week. Personally, my favorite. That Clemson-Syracuse game was amazing. I think they obviously have a chance at making it. I think they can. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Their schedule has been very easy. The only ranked team coming up is in Virginia Tech, and then probably the only other real competition is Syracuse. But when you got a quarterback like Wimbush, and I mean, Kelly's doing a great job with that team, Coach Kelly. I mean, they're averaging 33 points a game. They're limiting opponents to 18. I really think they have a chance to make a lot of noise this year, because if you can keep up that high level of play against these lower level teams, you can get in the playoffs, and who knows? I mean, it's an NFL saying, but I think it applies even more so in college. Anyone can win on any given day. I mean, seriously, in college, there's upsets all the time. So I don't think it's that out of the spectrum to see an independent team like Notre Dame make a lot of noise against these bigger teams.
And Stanford is a very well put together team. So this was the game that they were saying, is Notre Dame real or fake? And I think they show that they're a real team. It's just working forward. Are they going to be able to maintain this consistency?
West Virginia University stayed undefeated following a close win over Texas Tech. Is Will Grier Heisman favorite, and can the Mountaineers make noise in the Big 12?
I think he's the Heisman favorite right now. Absolutely. He has almost 1,500 yards through 4 games for West Virginia. That's an average of 371 passing yards a game, and he has over 4 touchdown passes per game. So moving forward, I think that he is the Heisman hopeful for sure. They do have a tough remaining schedule, though. Their last 4 games of the season is Texas, TCU, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma. So moving forward, they have the worst schedule to finish the season. And I don't know if that they're going to be a little nervous, because they haven't made it to a big bowl game since 2011, when they won the Orange Bowl against Clemson 70-33.
Big game. So I disagree. I want to hit on a point that you just made. Oklahoma. See, my Heisman candidate, Kyler Murray, right out of Oklahoma. Now I want to read you some stats to prove why he is better. Kyler has a QBR rating of 97. Grier has 91. Murray is more mobile and has 4 rushing touchdowns and 300 rushing yards a season. And when you look at like Heisman winners over the last few years, that whole notion that the senior usually gets the award is gone. When you had Johnny Manziel winning it as a sophomore, you have Jameis Winston winning it as a freshman. I mean, that whole notion has gone away. So a lot of people say Grier because he's a senior. And I think a lot of times when you look at the Heisman winners, they come from the better team. And when you have a great system like Oklahoma, and you're going to have the two play each other, I think the winner of that game is going to decide who's getting the Heisman, because I think a lot of times it shouldn't be applicable, but you have to look at team record, and people do. People say, okay, what team produced at a higher level? And I think Oklahoma is more loved and produces at a higher level than WVU.
And they have a much easier schedule moving forward, Oklahoma. Murray, he's a freak of nature. He's the 9th overall pick by the Oakland A's in the last MLB draft, just to put in perspective how much of an athlete he is. But just moving forward, I think he has a better chance. But right now, it's definitely Will Grier out of West Virginia. But moving forward, I think that he could overtake him. But we'll have to see.
Yeah, definitely for Will Grier. If he wins out for sure against these top teams, I think he'll get it leading a team like that. Yeah. But Kentucky improved to 5-0 with a win this week. How surprising are the Wildcats' start, and do they have a chance at contention in the SEC?
Okay, so they're having a good season, yes, but they still have to play Georgia in November. So I think that's going to be the game that shows you, are they real or are they fake? Because of course they're ranked 13th right now, which is insane to say the least. But until they play that Georgia team, I don't think that we can really say that they're going to compete with the SEC. plus if they win, let's just say they win out and they go to the conference championship, then you have to play either Alabama or LSU. And those teams, I think, are way better than Kentucky this year. Alabama looks like a surefire favorite to win the national championship. But I think Kentucky is, they're just a team right now. And then I think until they play against Georgia, then I'll decide if they're for real or if they're fake.
Now, I kind of want to piggyback off that. I kind of have a very similar opinion. I think they do have a chance of contention if they beat Georgia. Because when you look at the rest of their schedule, very easy. Not a single top 25 team on there the rest of the way. So if they can beat Georgia, they could easily be a playoff contender. But like you said, with a historically stacked conference like the SEC, when you got Bama, you got all these strong teams in that conference, I think it'll be very hard for them to go deep. But, I mean, they do have a stud running back in Benny Snell. I mean, 500 yards and 7 touchdowns. That is just ridiculous. I mean, so they do have the talent. It's just, I don't think historically they don't really have history behind them with how strong that conference is.
They also haven't really played anyone. They played Florida, which was their biggest competitor early on. I think it was week 2, and they won by a touchdown, I believe. But that's really been their only big-time opponent. And we keep saying until they get to Georgia, it's just a team.
Yeah.
But
Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jeff. Don't go anywhere. Sit down, shut up, and drink a beer.
My name is Eric Doe. I play safety for IUP football.
I'm Devon Barnes. I play guard for IUP football.
And you're watching The Big Hit on IUP-TV for all Crimson Hunt coverages.
we are back on The Big Hit. I'm Steven Langdon, joined by Jake Slobotnik, and we are talking IUP football. Let's get right into it.
What a mess.
What a mess last week to playing against Cal U, biggest opponent of the year in the Coal Bowl, and honestly, we are statistically bad against Cal U, and it really showed in this one.
Here's going to be my early take on this, and this is just an assumption, and it was probably just an off week for him. Lenny Williams played like the week 1 Nathan Peterman for the Buffalo Bills. 11 completions only, 169 yards total, and 2 interceptions, no touchdown passes. A lot better than Peterman, but he was pretty much the Peterman of the PSAC this week.
Yeah, and we talked about it even during our broadcast that we do during home football games, that Lenny Williams is a very spotty quarterback, and those first 4 weeks of the season, he was cruising, absolutely dominating off defenses,
breaking records, throwing nonstop touchdowns.
Oh my goodness!
But then he comes out last week, and you would have thought that he was just a freshman quarterback who's barely seen time.
Yeah, absolutely. It just looked like garbage. I don't know how else to say it in clean words. He just looked like trash.
Well, let's put it this way. Everyone has a bad week now and then. And last week to me was Lenny Williams' bad week. Thank goodness it came prior to homecoming against Slippery Rock, biggest weekend of the year, against the biggest rival we've ever faced. I'm glad it was against Cal U. Granted, it snapped our 21 regular season game winning streak, but I'm glad it's not Slippery Rock.
Absolutely, and we're like I said, we're statistically bad against Cal U. We lose just about every time that we're at Cal U. We haven't won there since 2014, I believe. 2006, and that is just absolutely. It's hard to wrap your mind around such a fantastic program like IUP, and to go into a rival like that, and to just, I don't even know. They just, throughout the entire game, you and I were chatting back and forth, and we were saying how just we were frustrated beyond belief.
I actually threw my phone, had to turn off my TV, and I think my dad actually had to yell at me from two stories down to tell me to quit yelling. I was so jacked up. I mean, that was despicable by the IUP offense.
To listen to those Cal U commentators.
Let's not get into that.
They did a great job commentating, but I mean, I don't know. I guess just because Cal U was winning just frustrated me already.
I think that's the case. But I mean, we have to hand out some accolades. Kayshaw Carter, he was pretty much the X factor when it came to the IUP defense and special teams, actually, returning at 95 yards for a touchdown. It definitely played a key factor. But yeah, all in all, the IUP offense was really shaky. Defense, they were letting receivers wide open. Quite honestly, they looked like the Steelers secondary from now on. I at least from what I saw.
They did not rack up a single sack all game, and they were averaging over 4 sacks a game entering the game. I think I counted 3 times that they had a great play, but then the lineman went too far and had an illegal man downfield. And they were on big plays.
Yeah.
They were on crucial plays, a 3rd down.
It's careless mistakes like that is what could cost you football games, and it proved there. I mean, look at the total statistics according to IUPathletics.com. Penalty yards, both teams had 10 apiece, and total yardage, 191 yards given up by both teams total. That is something you don't want, both as an offensive and defensive coordinator. You don't want to see easy yards given up like that because it could lead to easy points getting put up by the offense.
Absolutely. Well, that's enough about ranting about the Cal U game. Let's move forward to this week's game. We got homecoming week. It's at home against Slippery Rock. What are your initial thoughts on the game ahead?
I think it's going to be a strong game from both teams. Slippery Rock has proven time and time and again that they are one of the toughest adversaries for IUP. They always put up a challenge. I do think IUP is going to rebound after last week. Lenny Williams shaking all the cobwebs off. I think he was just coming down off that, the adrenaline from beating Brian Ironman's touchdown record. I think he was coming down off of that last week against Cal U. I think he's going to rebound. I predict he's going to throw at least 300 yards.
I think this was a great game to lose against Cal U because it's a big eye-opener that they aren't necessarily the team to beat in Division II. And I think going forward, that's going to play a big key. Of course, they're going to have to essentially win out and hope Cal U loses at some point to try and get into that PSAC championship. But I think this week is a big game for them because they're coming off that loss. It's homecoming, the biggest week of the year, even bigger than the home opener, which they absolutely dominated. But I think this week is really going to show if they are the team to beat in Division II or are they just going to completely blow up because their defense has to play better. Tillman has to get in on those plays. Petropola has to do a better job in that secondary. Lloyd needs to do a better job of, getting to those tight ends, getting to the quarterback a lot more. And I think that those 3 players are the biggest keys to the game. Not even so much on offense. Of course, you're going to have Lenny Williams. Of course, you're going to have Samir Bullock. But defense is going to play a huge factor.
Well, let's also not forget this is a home game. IUP is back in their own environment. The fans are going to be absolutely ballistic because it is homecoming weekend. Maybe different factors play into how rowdy they become, but I mean, the IUP Crazies show great support every home game, and with a week like this, the biggest rival of the year, Slippery Rock, our barstools go at it, our official counts go at it. It's fantastic, and I think IUP is set up for a comeback week and a win against Slippery Rock.
Yeah, this is really a big week because after this game, they don't really have a huge game to play until possibly playoffs. They have Edinburgh, but they've been okay. They've done a fantastic job this season, but just moving forward, this is the week. If they can get past this week, I think they'll be fine the rest of the year. Should be a good one. You can watch Jake and I. We're going to be broadcasting on IUP Athletics, and that's going to be Saturday at 2 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in to the Big Hit. We'll see you next week.